You probably think your heart needs something expensive: a special powder, a fancy capsule, a supplement with a glossy label, and a long list of promises. But one of the most interesting cardiovascular papers to come out recently points in a much simpler direction: the tea bag sitting in your kitchen right now. And if you are someone who keeps meaning to eat better while your blood pressure edges up, your cholesterol creeps higher, or your energy feels flatter than it used to, this is very much about you. A 2025 meta-analysis in the European Journal of Preventive Cardiology looked at 145 randomized controlled trials and found that flavin-3-OL-rich foods, including tea, lowered blood pressure and improved blood vessel function, especially in people whose numbers were already too high. Which, if you think about it, is actually quite remarkable. Not because tea is magic, it is not, but because something ordinary, affordable, and widely available may do more for daily heart support than many products people spend real money on. Stay with me, because later I want to show you the exact type of tea, the right amount, the best timing, and the one mistake that quietly cancels a lot of the benefit. I'm Dr. Steve Collins, and as someone who spends his working life helping people protect their heart and extend healthy years, I care deeply about habits that are realistic, evidence-based, and easy to keep. By the end of this, you'll know why tea matters, what the studies actually show, and how to use it wisely. To be honest, I start with tea not because it sounds dramatic, but because it fits real life. Most mornings, before I touch anything else, I make tea and give myself 5 minutes to wake up properly. That little ritual matters more than people realize. Your blood vessels are lined by a thin inner layer called the endothelium. Think of it as the smooth coating inside a pipe. When that lining works well, blood flows easily, pressure stays steadier, and the vessel can relax when it needs to. When it gets irritated by poor sleep, stress, smoking, high blood sugar, or chronically bad food choices, things get sticky and stiff. Now, here is something that genuinely surprised me. In that same 2025 European Journal of Preventive Cardiology meta-analysis, flavin-3-OL-rich foods and drinks improved flow-mediated dilation, which is one of the ways researchers test how well blood vessels actually open up. The improvement happened even apart from blood pressure changes. That tells us tea is not just nudging one number on a machine. It may be helping the vessel wall behave better. And here is the thing: many heart health supplements are sold on theory, not on this breadth of human trial data. My practical tip is simple. Pick an unsweetened tea you genuinely enjoy and make it part of the same time window every day so it becomes automatic. Right then, let us go one step deeper, because the type of tea matters more than the marketing. I am not loyal to one brand, honestly, but I am very particular about one thing. I want tea from the actual tea plant, Camellia sinensis. That means black tea or green tea, rather than a random herbal blend that simply sounds healthy. A lot of you will be wondering, does it have to be green tea? Not necessarily. Green tea gets most of the attention because of its catechins, especially EGCG. Black tea goes through more oxidation during processing, but it still contains flavin-3-ol compounds that genuinely matter. The bigger point is not green versus black in some dramatic rivalry. The bigger point is that both come from a plant with a pretty impressive cardiovascular profile. A 2025 cohort analysis in nutrients using UK Biobank data followed 177,810 people for a median of 7 years, and found the lowest cardiovascular risk among people drinking unsweetened tea. That word unsweetened is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. If you pour in sugar, syrup, or a dessert's worth of flavored calories, you change the metabolic picture fast. It is a bit like buying a good pair of walking shoes and then deciding to carry a sack of bricks on your back. Tea can help, but the extras can work directly against you. My tip for tomorrow is this: if you currently take sugar in your tea, cut it by half for 1 week, rather than trying to go from sweet to completely plain overnight. Gradual works. Cold turkey usually does not. Okay, so now we need to talk about the part people almost always ignore, which is how tea may actually affect blood pressure in the first place. When I explain blood pressure to patients, I keep it simple. Your heart is the pump. Your arteries are the pipes, but the pipes are not rigid plumbing under a sink. They are living tissue with muscle and a responsive lining that reacts to the signals it receives every single day. Tea's flavin-3-OLs appear to improve nitric oxide signaling and endothelial function, which can help those vessels relax more appropriately. You know when a hose kinks and the pressure changes instantly? Your circulation can behave a bit like that when the vessel wall gets stiff or chronically inflamed. Tea does not unclog arteries overnight. I am not going to overstate the evidence here, but in that same 2025 meta-analysis, office blood pressure dropped by about 0 millimeters of mercury on average, and the effect looked noticeably larger in people with elevated or hypertensive readings. That is not trivial. It is modest, yes, but meaningful, especially because it comes from a food-based habit rather than a pill designed to rescue a bad lifestyle. And here is the thing. The study authors also noted that the benefit was comparable in some cases to what you see from certain established lifestyle measures. So if you are sitting there thinking, can one cup really matter? Maybe not by itself, but one repeated habit layered into a genuinely heart-healthy day can matter a great deal. Stay with me because this matters. If you want the benefit, consistency beats intensity every single time. 2 steady cups most days will do far more than a heroic tea phase for 4 days, followed by nothing for 3 weeks. Moving on, let us talk about cholesterol, because this is where tea gets quietly impressive in a way most people completely miss. To be honest, cholesterol conversations get derailed all the time by extremes. People either believe that food has no effect whatsoever, or they think one ingredient will melt plaque away overnight. Neither is true. What I tell my patients is this: your liver, your diet, your genetics, and your daily habits all interact constantly. Tea seems to nudge the system in a favorable direction, particularly green tea. In Nutrition Journal, a meta-analysis of 31 randomized controlled trials involving 3,321 subjects found that green tea lowered total cholesterol by about 66 milligrams per deciliter, and LDL cholesterol by about 55 milligrams per deciliter. That is not a miracle. Honestly, it is not supposed to be. It is a small but consistent pressure on the right side of the scale. Picture your cardiovascular risk like a boat that keeps taking on tiny amounts of water from several different leaks. You do not ignore one leak because it looks small on its own. You fix every leak you reasonably can. Tea may be one of those fixes. It may modestly reduce LDL, and those small changes accumulate meaningfully over years when combined with better sleep, regular walking, blood pressure control, and not smoking. My practical advice here is very specific. If you already drink a sugary afternoon coffee drink, swap that for plain green or black tea at least 4 days this week. You lower your sugar exposure and may get a lipid-friendly benefit at the same time. And this next part is probably the most overlooked insight in this entire conversation, because tea works best when you stop treating it like a medicine and start treating it like a daily habit. One question I get asked all the time is whether tea only helps because it replaces something worse. And the honest answer is partly yes and partly no. If tea replaces a large sugary drink, of course that helps. But the studies I have just described suggest tea may do more than simply displace a bad choice. The flavin-3-ol compounds themselves appear to be biologically active. They may reduce oxidative stress, improve nitric oxide availability, and make the vessel wall less reactive and less irritable. Think of it like oiling the hinges on a stiff door. The door still needs a frame, a handle, and someone to open it, but the movement becomes smoother and easier. That is exactly how I want you to think about tea. Not as a hero that single-handedly saves the whole system, but as a daily nudge that helps the system work with less friction over time. My practical tip here is boring, but genuinely powerful. Do not wait until you feel healthy enough to build the habit. Start on an ordinary Tuesday. Keep the tea where you can see it, use the same mug every time, and make the good choice easier than the poor one. Stay with me because this matters, because one final detail will determine whether tea becomes truly useful or just another abandoned intention. Honestly, people love the idea of a concentrated extract because it feels stronger, more serious, more medical, more like something is actually happening. But the evidence does not reward that way of thinking. The 2022 guideline published in Advances in Nutrition, developed through the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics process, supported a food-based intake of 400 to 600 milligrams a day of flavin-3-ols for cardiometabolic protection, and specifically stated that this was not a recommendation for supplements. That matters enormously. Why? Because foods come packaged with a full matrix of compounds, natural timing, and tolerability that isolated products often miss entirely. Even the 2025 cardiovascular meta-analysis pointed out that effects from isolated compounds like EGCG were overall smaller and less consistent than effects seen from whole foods such as cocoa and tea. And the authors stated clearly that it seems prudent to prioritize flavin-3-ol rich foods over supplementation, which, if you think about it, is actually quite remarkable. The boring cupboard staple may beat the shiny capsule, not because it is stronger on paper, but because human bodies often respond better to food than to an extracted megadose. So what should you actually do tomorrow? Do not shop for an advanced heart formula. Buy decent tea, drink it regularly, and let your routine do the heavy lifting. Now, before I go any further, if you are finding this useful, please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who keeps spending money on supplements while ignoring the basics. It genuinely makes a huge difference to how many people this reaches, and that is exactly why I make these videos. Now, there is one important catch, and you probably saw it coming. Sweet tea is not the same conversation. A lot of you will be wondering whether adding a little honey, sugar, or flavored syrup really makes that much difference. It can, and often it does. The UK Biobank analysis did not find the same protective pattern for sugar-sweetened or artificially sweetened tea as it did for unsweetened tea. That does not mean one sweet cup ruins your entire week, but it does mean the clean cardiovascular signal appears strongest when tea is simply tea. And here is the thing. Sugar does not only add calories, it can drive glucose swings, appetite surges, increased insulin demand, and over time can push the entire cardiometabolic picture in the wrong direction. It is like installing a better air filter in your home while leaving a window wide open during a dust storm. You are helping with one hand and undoing it with the other. My honest advice is to retrain your palate gradually rather than dramatically. Use cinnamon, lemon, or a small splash of milk if that helps you move away from sugar over time. For some of you, iced unsweetened tea with citrus will honestly be easier than hot tea. The format matters far less than the pattern. Stay with me because this matters, because timing and quantity also deserve a clear reality check. I drink tea earlier in the day for a deliberate reason, not because there is some mystical fat-burning window, but because caffeine taken too late can disturb sleep, and poor sleep is absolutely brutal for heart health. You already know this in your bones. One rough night and your resting heart rate climbs, your appetite shifts dramatically, your patience disappears, and your food choices the following day go completely sideways. So yes, tea can help, but not if it quietly sabotages your sleep while you are focused on other things. If you are sensitive to caffeine, use regular tea in the morning and switch to decaffeinated tea later in the day, or simply keep your second cup before mid-afternoon. There was also a practical note in the 2025 analysis that the typical beneficial range aligned with ordinary dietary intakes, often around 1 to 3 servings a day of tea or other flavin-thiol-rich foods. That is another reason I find this story so compelling. It is not asking you to live like a monk or spend money like a biohacker. It is simply asking you to be consistent with something completely ordinary. I am not going to overstate the evidence here, because tea is not a replacement for prescribed medication, and nobody should ever come off blood pressure treatment because they watched a video on the internet. But as part of a sane, evidence-based daily routine, it makes real and genuine sense. Moving on, let us clear up the final misunderstanding, because this is precisely where people either become far too cynical or dangerously too excited, and there is a safety piece I absolutely do not want to skip over. A lot of you will be wondering, what if I already take blood pressure tablets, cholesterol medicine, or blood thinners? In general, normal tea drinking is far less concerning than high-dose supplements, but you still need to apply common sense. If tea upsets your stomach, worsens acid reflux, makes you feel shaky, or starts replacing water entirely, then adjust it. If you have iron deficiency, taking strong tea right alongside iron-rich meals may not be ideal because tannins can reduce iron absorption. And if you are considering concentrated extracts rather than whole tea, that is an entirely different and more complicated conversation. My tip is simple and clear. Keep tea firmly in the lane of food, not treatment. Drink it because it is a smart daily choice, not because you expect it to do the job of your doctor, your medication, or your wider lifestyle. The people who do best are almost always the ones who keep it simple and repeat it consistently. Right then, with all of that grounded, let me bring this home in the most practical way possible. A common reaction I hear is, if tea is good, more must be better. Honestly, no. More is not always better in medicine, and it is not always better in nutrition either. Very high-dose extracts can create real problems. The 2025 European Journal of Preventive Cardiology paper specifically noted concerns around higher-dose flavanol supplements, including safety questions, potential negative effects on iron absorption, and possible interactions with certain medications. So when I say tea may beat many heart supplements, I do not mean tea is some limitless health hack with no ceiling. I mean that a normal, food-based intake of real tea has a stronger and far more believable evidence base than many of the products currently sold for heart support. That is a very specific and very different claim. And here is the thing, that should actually reassure you rather than disappoint you. Real health usually looks repetitive, affordable, and slightly boring. Not flashy, not exotic, not wrapped in silver packaging with dramatic fonts. My practical tip is to pair your tea with another heart-protective cue. Brew it before your morning walk. Have it alongside a fiber-rich breakfast. Use it as the signal that your late evening snacking is finished for the night. Tie one good habit to another, and you make both significantly more likely to stick long-term. Now, if all of this sounds almost too simple, good. Simplicity is very often exactly what people are missing. So what do I want you to remember from all of this? Tea is not a cure. It is not a loophole that lets you ignore sleep, movement, smoking, chronic stress, or the food on your plate. But there is now solid, well-replicated evidence that common unsweetened tea, especially when used as part of a consistent daily routine, can meaningfully support blood pressure, help blood vessel function, and modestly improve parts of the cholesterol picture. And compared with the many supplements currently marketed for heart health, the case for tea is often broader, more practical, and considerably more honest. To be honest, that is exactly the kind of intervention I like most. It respects real life. It does not ask for perfection, it just asks for repetition. Thank you for watching. If this gave you something genuinely useful to think about, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs a simpler and smarter approach to heart health. And if you want to go deeper on any of this, I have done other videos on blood pressure, cholesterol, and everyday longevity habits, so have a search around the channel and keep learning. You take care, and I will see you in the next one.